Man, this is incredible! You know Piers, right? The gym leader from Spikemouth? Oh, his singing voice is astounding. Here, listen. Yeah, tons of people agree that modern Pokemon games probably should have voice acting. Sure, plenty of scenes like the Paradise Protection Protocol and Kieran's breakdown are great, but they would be genuinely incredible if the characters actually said words. If you really want to hear the characters yap, you'll have to stick with stuff like short animations or miniseries. Or if you're willing to accept the anime continuity, that's always an option. Plus, for that, there is plenty of material. But actually, there are some options beyond that. Despite how silent the Pokemon games tend to be, there have been plenty of cases across the series where we do, indeed, get the privilege of hearing human speech. Before we start, I want to ask, why isn't there any big bombastic voice acting in modern Pokemon? God knows they have the budget for it. Well, actually, we did get some reasoning from Game Freak's very own Shigeru Omori over these past couple years. Now, whether or not you agree with these reasons is a whole other story. Pokemon Scarlet and Violet are translated into 9 languages, and considering simplified and traditional Chinese are spoken the same, that would be 8 different voiceovers to do. It would also cost a lot. As mentioned, they have the budget, it's just a matter of whether or not they want to spend it. It would also take quite a while, which wouldn't exactly mesh well with the yearly release schedule. Well, I mean, hey, maybe it could start to work out. The second reason, though? With no voice, the players can kind of create their own image of who that character is as they're playing. That's the biggest cop-out I've ever heard. But sure, let's play along anyway. Maybe that is a good idea. When I played Persona 3 Reload, the voice social links took quite a while to get used to. I crafted part of their personalities in Fest, and I learned to love that version of them. But in terms of Pokemon, that reasoning immediately falls apart when you consider the anime, the multiple miniseries, and spoilers I guess, the entire game that gives voices to all of these characters. So to summarize, voice acting isn't there because of 2 reasons. It would be a lot of work, and they don't feel like doing the work. But in the past, they have at least dipped their toes into voice acting, even sometimes their whole ankle, whoa! So yeah, let's take a look-see. The spin-offs have always been pretty experimental in most aspects, and yes, that does mean they feature their fair share of voice acting. The earliest example of any human speech appearing in a Pokemon game was on August 1st, 1998, with Pokemon Stadium. No, that's Pokemon Stadium 2. This is the Japanese exclusive original release of Pokemon Stadium, and it was incredibly bare bones. But that's not important. This game did have an announcer. Of course, he spoke Japanese in this Japanese exclusive game. But that is indeed the first human voice in a Pokemon game. Of course, that carried over to Stadium 2 and Stadium Gold and Silver, known to us as Stadium and Stadium 2. My head hurts. The announcer in Stadium 1, our Stadium 1, is so much fun. The crusty Nintendo 64 compression adds a lot of charm, alongside his weird pronunciations. And noises. Ted Lewis is his name, and he's done quite a few other roles. He's voiced Giovanni pretty consistently in the anime, but more importantly, he voiced... Incredible. An announcer for a battling simulator should be a given anyway, so if we didn't get that, there'd be problems. Hop on it, Showdown. But that's not what you're here to hear. There has indeed been voice acting in the mainline Pokemon games too. All the way back on September 12th, 1998, Pokemon Yellow version released in Japan. And technically, yes, it does feature voice acting. Now, how the hell would they manage to make a voice come out of this thing? The best they could. I guess this isn't human speech, it's Pikachu. But a human, Ikue Otani, did produce this noise, so I'll count it. There are quite a few voice clips in the game, about 40 of them, all of them sounding just as crunchy. They change depending on Pikachu's happiness, condition, stuff like that. Honestly, pretty impressive for being on the brick. Also, seeing voice credits in a Game Boy game is just an inherently funny concept. And while we're at it, if we are indeed counting Pokemon saying their names as voice acting, let's go over all the games that have just that. No discernible speech aside from us knowing what Seal is. From Pokemon X and Y in 2013 to BDSP in 2021, Pikachu, instead of using a traditional cry, was voiced by Ikue Otani again. Likewise, Eevee, starting in Let's Go and ending in BDSP, was voiced by Aoi Yuki. When Legends Arceus and Scarlet and Violet rolled around though, they went back to their standard cries. And honestly, for as iconic as their anime voices are, I personally do prefer this more animalistic approach. Not only does it make them fit in better with the other Pokemon, but it also makes the Pokemon world feel more grounded in a way, for as grounded as it can be. Also, I do not want my dog to laugh after I pet it. That's just weird. Oh yeah, the spin-offs too. Pikachu and Pokemon Go, Pikachu and Pokemon Sleep, Pikachu and Rumble Rush, Pikachu and Pokemon Bank, Pikachu and Pokemon Pinball, Pikachu and Pokemon Dash. My god, this is getting out of hand. Pikachu and Eevee and Home, Every Pokemon in Pokeparks 1 and 2 use their anime voices, which I'd say is more understandable for a world like this where there are no humans and it's pushed even further into fantasy. In Pokemon Pinball Ruby and Sapphire, Pikachu talks again, but also Pichu's in there. And in Hey You Pikachu, it's the same thing with all the Pokemon using their anime cries. And if you want to count it, there's also the voice of you yelling at the rat.
Pikachu, go left!
Okay, real deal this time. Actual proper non-Pokemon voice acting first appeared in the mainline Pokemon games with Black 2 and White 2. As part of the music in Roxy's gym, she sings, spelling out Pokemon. Heck, the Japanese version even got a different line with her spelling out Dogar instead, which is Koffing's Japanese name. You know, it is really fitting for a gym leader who's a singer to have these kinds of vocals in their theme. And honestly, the singing wasn't even something they needed to do. She's already the lead guitarist in her band, so they could have stuck to that as her gimmick. But nope, they put the proverbial cherubi on top by giving her vocal cords. And look, I don't want to trash Sword and Shield too much for this. That game does have its merits, but genuinely, what were they thinking with this? This is when it was necessary. That's not even the end of Black and White 2, or gym themes for that matter, considering Elisa's gym theme has a couple clear vocal samples in there. There's the "Are you ready?" that plays when you're walking up the catwalk. Are you ready? But then Elisa herself appears. The "Give me what I need" and reverberating voice samples absolutely make the atmosphere here. Plus, I want you to keep in mind that all this personality and oomph belongs to a gym that looks like this. It's a straight line with 3 trainer fights along the way, but the presentation makes it one of the most memorable gyms in the series. Again, not to bash too much on Sword and Shield, but Pier's gym was also a straight line. Just let's brainstorm real quick. Imagine if you heard his performance echoing off in the distance. You can't make out the lyrics and the instrumental's a bit muffled, but as you beat more and more trainers and get closer to his stage, the song gets clearer. And then this cutscene hits with him belting out the chorus or something. That would have been so good. Heck, even Gen 7 had some vocal samples in the Team Skull battle themes. Like, I don't get it. But Gen 8 does actually have voice acting too. In Legends Arceus, the player characters actually vocally emote. If they're throwing a ball, doing a dodge roll, or even getting mauled. They'll make a noise, grunting, shouting, huffing. It's not much, but believe me when I say this genuinely excited me when I first played the game. And I don't know whether that says more about me or this series. Unsurprisingly, it breathes so much more life into the experience. Ray, or Lucas, depending on what the lore is, I don't know at this point. It's been a big stew since Oras. Ray is voiced by Tatsuya Katono. They have only done one thing, that being Ray. There is no picture of this individual, no information. I guess they were whisked away to the past too. Akari's voice actor, Tamaki Fuji, has a little more to talk about though. She worked in the sound department for Sword and Shield, whatever that entails. And she also performed in a single episode for a show called My Beautiful Man. This was after Legends came out? What a debut! And last in terms of people talking in mainline games, I know, it's over already, is in Scarlet and Violet, if you can even count it. There are some areas in the game where you can hear a crowd of people chattering. There's the Academy, both inside and outside. It's very subtle at Kitakami Hall. Honestly, I can't 100% tell if it's actually there or not. It might literally just be the wind. And most notably, and also most clearly, you can hear the talking on the title screen. This does make things like the school seem more lively, I guess. But at the same time, absolutely nothing discernible is being said. It's a start, I think. But as stated before, the spin-offs are where we find the true voice acting. I've already mentioned the Stadium games, but there's also Pokemon Battle Revolution, which might as well be considered a Stadium game. Following up on those 3, it has its own announcer. This time, in English, being voiced by Roger Parsons. He's done quite a few things, most notably being the iconic narrator from the anime.
The time for Ash's long-anticipated rematch against Fantina is finally at hand.
That guy that tells you why Ash is walking through the same field for the 700th time? That's him. Much like the Stadium announcer, he has some fun lines here too.
Earthquake tears open the ground!
Pokemon Snap, while it doesn't have full voice acting, has quite a few clips for Todd.
Yes!
And iconically, Professor Oak. You are not a true Pokemon fan unless you've heard
You were close!
at least a dozen times by now. This is also one of the games where a handful of Pokemon have their anime voices. Pikachu, of course. Meowth, iconic. Jigglypuff sings her song from the anime. Now, the long-awaited sequel to Pokemon Snap, New Pokemon Snap, took it a little bit further. Off topic, but remember how everyone was asking for a new Snap game, they got it, and now no one talks about it? It even got free DLC. Anyway, Professor Mirror, Rita, Phil, and Todd all have a handful of canned voice lines depending on the situation.
Let's do this.
And even sometimes full voiceover.
We're getting a shot of that Pokemon. You can press the A button to take a photo.
It's not really too much, but, and I feel like I've said this before, it adds so much. The cast all does a pretty good job, but I want to give special shoutouts to Erica Mendez as Phil, who also voices Pac-Man from the Ghostly Adventures. Whoa! Oh, and of course, obligatory Pikachu voice. Now, Pokemon Puzzle League is a fun one. I've wanted to talk about this game for a while now just because of how bizarre it is, and I guess this is the best chance I'll get. This is an official Nintendo 64 Pokemon game, yet it feels so weirdly cheap. Not in terms of content, no, there's plenty to do here, and it's a fun time, but the production value is all over the place. Look at this title screen. A pretty wonky MIDI cover of the Pokemon anime opening with absolutely no movement aside from the press start text having a seizure, and I thought Computer Soldier Porygon taught them a lesson. Then we get a fully animated, fully voice-acted anime cutscene where Oak tells Ash to play in the Puzzle League tournament. Okay, that's cool. It's kind of small, but FMV like this is still kind of impressive for the N64. And then it hits us with this menu. I don't get it. Anyway, we're here for the voices. The game has quite a few Pokemon in it, and they all use their anime voices, but we're pretty used to that by now. The fun part here is in all the trainers, plus Meowth from Team Rocket. Each and every one of them has voice lines from their anime actors, and paired with the N64 compression, they are glorious. And oh boy, there are some pretty memorable lines here. Maybe memorable isn't right. It's more like...
You're wasting time. Work harder.
I'm gonna win!
brain damage? Yeah, every character has 4 or maybe 5 lines each, and during proper gameplay, they'll repeat the same 2 phrases over and over. This is particularly bad if you or the opponent is playing well, since every combo or good move you'll make triggers either a catchphrase or the selected Pokemon making their own sound. Matches turn into this cacophony of Gary laughing like the Joker while Surge keeps claiming that playtime's over, while we are both clearly still playing, all while his Magnemite is screeching its own name. But voice acting is voice acting, and this voice acting is funny. Pokemon Channel's a pretty simple one. Despite being a game about watching TV, none of the hosts speak discernible words unless you count saying their own names as discernible.
Squirtle, Squirtle.
Not even Professor Oak speaks. He just shows up on screen with some text and no sound comes out. Professor Sada, is that you? I'm not counting the narration in the Pichu Bros shorts because that is quite literally just an anime episode, and you know, we have enough of those already. There is one exception though, that being Meowth. Considering all the Pokemon use their anime voices, and Meowth speaks in the anime, he can actually talk. And justifiably, he's kinda prominent. He has a clip when you boot up the game.
This show is brought to you by these sponsors here.
He shows up as a reporter on the Pokemon News Flash.
I'm here on the scene.
And there's also Meowth's Party, this fever dream of a music video where Meowth sings. Well, maybe Roxy wasn't so special. See, Pokemon Channel wasn't really a game though, but this next game is so much of a game that it got released 3 damn times. Poké Tournament's just cool. An official Pokemon fighting game? Yes, please. Oh, my skill level aside, this game has a fair amount of voice acting. The whole campaign features fully voiced visual novel style cutscenes.
To be honest, I still don't really understand what happened.
There's also Nia. No, different Nia. Screw off. She acts as your sort of companion all across the game. She's in stuff like menus, and she even commentates battles. Which just kind of equates to her telling you exactly what to do at every waking moment, but it's fine. You do have the option to turn her advice off though, if you're into that. Okay, I don't know if this is a hot take, but I don't think Pokémon Tournament's English voice acting is very good. This isn't a jab at the actors themselves, but everyone just feels super low energy, and their delivery's pretty flat most times.
Was that power I just felt coming from you two?
Even in the midst of battle, Nia sounds like she just got out of bed.
Uh-oh. Looks like you were hit with a negative status.
But kind of like Puzzle League, I'd rather have it here than not. And hey, maybe it could be improved in a potential sequel, Now, in terms of the Pokemon, Pikachu is Pikachu, but all the other Pokemon, playable and support, are also voiced, just not in the way that we're used to. Instead of using their artificial game cries or their anime voices, they go for some more generic grunts and yells. And in the context of this fighting game, that was probably the best option. It's just something that we're not quite used to, and it's new, therefore it's terrible and I hate it. Oh, and there's also the announcer or something. I mean, it is a fighting game after all. This next one's big, probably bigger than Pokken. The Pokemon games with the most extensive voice acting have to be the Detective Pikachu games. Anyone else keep forgetting the second one came out? Just me? Okay. These games are very much story-driven, at least more so than mainline. How are you supposed to be a detective without a plot to follow? And considering this is kind of baby's first Phoenix Wright game, with most of those babies probably not being able to read, a lot of the story cutscenes and mystery-solving segments have full voice acting. Pokemon fans also can't seem to read, so this helps with that too.
Pikachu, it's Murkrow! Watch out!
Of course, both games are fully voiced in both Japanese and English, just with subtitles for the other languages. And of course, we can't forget about one of the biggest talking points in Detective Pikachu, that being Detective Pikachu. The deep, gruff voice isn't something most of us expected, especially when the game first came out, but I think most of us have grown to love it over time.
Well, should we interview the witnesses?
In English, that was Kaiji Tang's gruff voice specifically, the same gruff voice that belongs to my number one Ichiban Kasuga. I was a bit surprised to learn how both the original and returns had some pretty alright casts. I guess they could afford voice actors after all. But in all honesty, despite the sheer amount of voice work here, there's really not much to say. All the performances are pretty good, better than the graphics anyway, my lord, and it all works for what it is. The Pokemon themselves, aside from Detective Pikachu and Mewtwo, and Deoxys, well, spoilers, all use the anime method of saying their names, and some of these are kinda weird.
Meta.
But at the same time, it kind of feels like it works here. And we are sticking to games, but since we're talking about Detective Pikachu, I think I should at least mention the movie. Yeah, Ryan Reynolds says Arceus wrong.
Oh, sweet. Mother of Arceus, that feels so good.
So that's why we never got a sequel. Now, among all these games, you might notice that one in particular was skipped over. One that, in my opinion, is the most interesting, cool, and just plain fun case of voice acting in the series. Oh yeah, you know it, you love it, you roll the gacha and get nothing from it, it's... No need to dance around it. Pokemon Masters, or Pokemon Masters EX now, haha, provides voices, likely the canon voices, to almost every major character in the series. From gym leaders, to rivals, to minor NPCs, to yes, even the previously silent protagonists. Despite Master's story mode and events being presented like visual novels, they're not fully voiced, which is a bit of a bummer. The character interactions are great as they are, but the voices would make them just that slightest bit better. But also consider it's a mobile game, and considering how many characters there are in this game, too much dialogue would probably make your phone explode. So instead, each character has a handful of standard phrases they'll say.
Oh, I get it.
Attacks they'll call out.
Grass power, full force, come on!
And the odd line here and there.
Wow, another step forward for us.
It's relatively small, but I'll say it again, it adds so much! Just hearing how a character should sound instead of just reading their words can completely change how you view them. For example, Penny is British.
I feel like I've taken a step forward.
Take that as you will. And also, Piers.
I'm Piers, the gym leader of Spikemuth.
So he can talk! Plenty of these voices feel so perfect too. Like, take Barry, always in a rush, full of energy, and this take on him, fast talking with a higher tone, is great.
I'm definitely prepared for some battling today.
Sure, he's talked before, like in Pokemon Evolutions and even the main anime, but those both felt just a little too level-headed. Masters provides a voice very befitting of this animation specifically. Heck, Red's voice is incredibly close to what I expected, considering he doesn't say anything. Well, Link has some competition. Some of the voices do sound a bit odd, but there's nothing terrible by any means. Like, Courtney pushes the whole robot thing just a little bit too far. I mean, maybe it's good they didn't add this at least. What was up with this? But really, that's just kind of Pokemon Masters for you. As fun as it is to see all of them together, most of the characters in Masters are very simplified and kind of flanderized. And even though the writing doesn't always hit, it's really great to have all these iconic characters being so lively in a way they really haven't been before. All in all, Masters giving voices to these characters after so long is just inherently cool. It also single-handedly shuts down the let players make up the voices argument, so that's nice. Oh yeah, and Pikachu. Considering how massive this franchise is, that, of course, wasn't everything. It's never everything. So let's quickly run through the rest, okay? Don't worry, the most exciting stuff's behind us. Pokemon Unite has Pikachu, that much is obvious, but the other Pokemon also have their own voices in the opening cinematic. Hooray! There's also an announcer to commentate parts of the matches.
What a goal!
The Japanese exclusive educational Pokemon games on the Sega Pico, being based on the anime, have some characters in Pokemon talk. And it's honestly kind of impressive for being on a 16-bit system made for babies. Both versions of Pokemon Play It for PC rather notoriously have a coach in Julie. She's a Pokemon trainer just like you. Pokérom, Gotta Learn 'Em All, is another educational game, this one having pretty extensive voice acting for Oak, who commentates your learning adventures. The anime announcer even comes back for a couple lines, whoa. Pokemon Masters Arena has a bunch of Pokemon saying their own names, how fun. Frickin' Camp Pokemon for mobile had full voiceover for its characters.
Hey camper, this is the Pokemon Alternate Reality Exploration and Naming Area.
Why? I don't know, but it makes for a fun party fact. Learn with Pokemon Typing Adventure has a sort of announcer to call out your epic typing skills.
Please show. You never stop.
I'm sorry for saying that. Pokemon Playhouse, which I didn't even know existed, has voiceover.
Welcome to Pokemon Playhouse.
Those Pokemon arcade games that use tags and stuff, some of those have some pretty typical arcade announcer type stuff going on. Insert coin and a bit more. Pokemon Garden, the recently discovered lost Pokemon multiplayer flash game thing, had tour guides who spoke Japanese. You can play Pikachu Talk on your Amazon Alexa, and Pikachu will talk to you through it. What's up, Pikachu?
My home address is...
And if you want to count Smash Bros, all the Pokemon, playable Pokeballs, or stage hazards, mostly go the anime route of saying their names, with their voices changing depending on the language if need be. A pretty notable thing here, though, is Red actually having a voice.
You did it, Charizard!
But I have no clue what changed between Brawl and Ultimate for this to happen.
Charizard, get a hold of yourself!
I mean, technically it isn't Red, just Pokemon Trainer, but I'm not getting into that debate today. Also in Ultimate, Leaf, or female Pokemon Trainer, whatever, has her own voice too.
You can do it! Don't give up yet!
On top of that, there's dozens of Flash games that certainly use the anime voices for the Pokemon, but other than that, that's really it. I hate to break it to you, but the Band of Thieves and the 1000 Pokemon doesn't have any voice acting to speak of. What the f- So, what have we learned today? That Pokemon games do have voice acting and that you should stop complaining. I'm kidding, of course. It's still really bizarre that large-scale, proper voice acting has been in the series quite a bit, actually. Just not in the big name games. Imagine Volo's betrayal if he actually yelled instead of just talking big. You know what? Time to put on the speculation goggles for a minute. Legend Zaza, even though we haven't seen it yet, seems promising. And with this potentially huge game coming soon, they have the perfect opportunity to go all in with voice acting. I guess we'll just have to wait and see. Although it feels like we're missing something. We counted Roxy's singing, Elisa's gym, and even the Team Skull music for their vocals. But even not counting the songs that just have chanting, we're missing one piece of music that does have lyrics. Wait, don't tell me. No, no, no!